So often, what we really want to experience in relationship is to feel seen. And that's a lot of what I actually see and hear you guys writing down, regardless of what word it's coming in. So we want to feel seen, right? We want to feel heard. We want to feel honored and valued for who we are. We want to be recognized, not for what we do, not for how we make others feel, not because we give them what they want, but we want to be recognized for who we uniquely are. Because when we love another, we love the essence of that person. We love their soul. And when we don't feel that, we can feel anger and resentment and bitterness and all of these things. And when we don't feel free within ourselves to show who we are, to speak our own truth, to honor our own boundary, we're not actually giving the other person the opportunity to see who we are, even though that's what we want, because we're trying to make them happy. Because we're not actually showing ourselves, we're trying to show who they want us to be. And this can show up in really unconscious ways. So yes, and we want respect, which is to be valued, right? To be honored and to be treated as an equal. These things require you harness this within yourself. Because unfortunately, based on the belief systems we've all inherited, we are so entrained, I'm going to talk about what those are. We're so entrained to look outside of ourselves for our value and to look outside of ourselves to know who we are, to look outside of ourselves for our worth, to look outside of ourselves for our power, to look outside of ourselves for acceptance or agreement or permission or approval or love, right? You name it. We are conditioned to do that. We are conditioned to do that because we've been told that divine exists outside of us. At its root, at the core. That's why. We've been told that we're not allowed to choose for ourselves. Women in particular have been told that we're not allowed to have a self. Now, you'll hear me talk a lot about soul, because the soul is exactly what's been denied in both men and women, but particularly in women. We'll talk about how it transitioned. And when we're not connecting soul to soul, we can't truly see each other. And that requires being in the heart. So we can only be seen and see through the lens of our heart. We can't be in our heart when we're in our ego. I'm not going to go into a massive description of the difference between soul and ego and how we distinguish that. But our ego is our external identity self. When we're sourcing externally, we're acting from the ego, the limited, purely 3D physical human self. And then we place demands and expectations from that. When we're communicating and connecting heart to heart, soul to soul, we are sourcing from within automatically as the divine beings that we are. And we're overflowing in love, and we automatically create freedom for ourselves through that state, and then allow other people to be in that as well. And that capacity to be in your divine power and your sovereignty is what allows you to not need the other person to be different for you to feel free. I feel like I'm jumping ahead of myself because there's just so much I want to say about this. So I'm going to go a little bit more into how and why these beliefs started, and then I'll talk more specifically about how that shows up and what we do about that and what sovereignty really looks like. So I have traced the majority of the beliefs that we experience in relationships, which are generally subconscious, meaning they lie underneath the conscious mind. 95% of our behavior is subconscious. So the choices we're making, the way that we're acting, the things that we're saying, 95% of that is subconscious. Subconscious means it is below the level of our conscious mind. That's why you can think something consciously but not feel that way, because our subconscious mind shows up in how we feel, right? So we can think consciously, I'm equal, I have a right to this, but you might feel like scared, or you don't actually, or afraid to take up space. That's that disconnect between the conscious mind, the subconscious mind. So most of these beliefs are subconscious, though a lot of them are also still conscious in our society. And when we look at the current state of relationships, we can trace it all the way back to the story of Adam and Eve, which was written around between 1200 BC and 586 BC. So it took almost 700 years to piece the story together. I was certainly never told that when I learned about the story. And at the time this was being written, there was a massive shift in our culture from one way of being to another. So prior to this Adam and Eve story being written, women were revered as holy and sacred. The reason I'm sharing this history is because it's really important to know that the Adam and Eve story is a story. These are beliefs that were adopted by a particular group of people at a particular time. It's important because when we know that these are just beliefs, we get to withdraw our agreement to them and no longer hold on to them consciously or subconsciously.